We're heading into round 2 of the Guinness Six Nations, of course, this weekend. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Flying to thanks. How are you keeping?
Good, thanks. Yeah, very good.
Good advice you gave us last week in this slot. You were like, I know you were doing the sales job, but it was very good advice. The clips were doing the rounds. Sonny Bill Williams was getting into the action at the end of it. I know you're not going to be as vociferously promoting tonight's game for various reasons, Quinny, but there's a lot of brilliant talent in that team.
Yeah, there is. It was a brilliant match on Friday night in Wales, and I think the first half I was a little bit shocked, as were the Irish supporters that were there in Cowland Bay, with probably the way Wales put Ireland under pressure. Their backs were outstanding. They could have been further ahead. Ireland were hanging on a little bit, and then they turned it around the second half and got some brilliant tries themselves. I think the 2 tries they scored, Ireland scored in the first half, were obviously a bit forward orientated with pressure and power off of mauls. Wales backs, as I said, there's a guy playing, Louis Hennessy, outstanding at 13 for Wales under 20s, and they put Ireland under a lot of pressure. But Richie Murphy obviously got the players in at half time, and they came out with a different kind of intensity and performance in the second half, and they were brilliant. And the middle, the 2 second rows and the back row for Ireland were just huge men and very powerful. And some of the offloads and the tries in the game, and obviously the Sam Prendergast offload for Nicholson's try was outstanding.
Delicious.
Yeah, it was brilliant. So very heartening to see so many good players coming through in the under-20s, and possible guys who could push on for Ireland honours in the future. They're playing France tonight. This is potentially again a Grand Slam decider. France only barely got past Italy last week. Italy missed a conversion to win it. So it should be a great game in Cork tonight, certainly.
So much to talk about with the game at the Aviva tomorrow. We might start with how Ireland's hand has been forced. A load of injuries, some of them obviously we've known about, and then some late injuries. And it really, when you think about it in terms of World Cup context, it's great. Like, we've been forced to build depth and make late changes and all the sorts of things that happen in a World Cup.
Yeah, and Andy Farrell said that, didn't he? That he's been really tested and challenged. I think it was very brave and a big call for Ireland. They obviously made a decision at the start of the week around the injuries, and ruling Gibson Park and Tyke Furlong out early in the week, and Cian Healy. I think if it was the last game of the championship or a cup final or something like that, some of these players would have possibly played. But I think this is what he wants, and I think he wants to kind of challenge the squad in the depths. And he's, to be fair, pretty positive, and his attitude is pretty good towards that. Obviously, if a coach comes up and starts talking about the misfortune of injuries before a game, it's not great for your side's mentality going into the game. But you genuinely believe, Andy Farrell, that he's liking the challenges around this. Obviously, if France beat them tomorrow, we'll debate whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But you go to a World Cup. I think 2015, Adrian, if you think back to that Argentina game, and Johnny Sexton's gone, Paul O'Connell, Peter O'Mahony, Tommy Bowe, Sean O'Brien, there's 5 of them gone. And it was really crucial. So hopefully if something like that happens in the World Cup, that they'll be able to cope. And obviously the likes of Stuart McCluskey and Finlay Bealham are the ones that are, the big winners here. We know what Rob Herring can do. He's a very good player, and having Ronan Kelleher back as well is brilliant. But I think also Conor Murray, just, we've been talking a lot about the way Ireland have played and how good Gibson Park has been in the last 12, 18 months with Ireland, the pace, the tempo. So it's another opportunity for him, and he delivered last week, Conor Murray. But Finlay Bealham is the one here, and that's probably an area where we were worried about the depth. Again, we'll know more tomorrow. He's coming up against Cyril Baille in a very strong French front row, but it's not a bad situation for them, and they just got to cope with it. And I think, going back to what I said, announcing it early in the week, ruling out the players, some coaches and teams before would have kept this quiet till Thursday, you know what I mean? So the opposition can't prepare, and you keep it quiet for a bit. they announced it early, so they're confident in what they're doing.
Can I just? I'm as you can tell, very optimistic about the fact that we've been forced into the injuries and the help it gives us in terms of the World Cup planning. Can I be pessimistic for a second and say, because I was interested in your thoughts there about you've already name checked, because I wanted to ask you about the real terms benefit, as in who are the players now that have put their hands up. Have we been lulled into a false sense against the Owl Lads of Wales? Like you name checked Beelum, you name checked Herring, you name checked Murray, and obviously there are others there, McCluskey, and then this weekend obviously Coyne, Casey, Kelleher come into the mix as well. Have we been lulled into a false sense of depth by playing the Owl Lads of Wales that we may be about to get exposed a little bit more of and suddenly realise actually we're not in such rude health?
Yeah, it could happen. I think if you look at the players that are missing, Adrian, it's very simple. Robbie Henshaw would start, Dan Sheehan would start, Jamison Gibson-Park would start, and Tyke Furlong. So there's 4 kind of guaranteed players who would start in the team if they were available. I think obviously we'll know more tomorrow. France were poor against Italy. It's down to the mental side of things as well. It's hard to keep it going all the time when you're winning. And we saw a bit of a lull in November from Ireland against Fiji and Australia. And at the time, people were saying, and Andy Farrell said it's not a bad thing. I think that the depth chart that you're talking about is about powerful players coming off the bench and very little between selections, if you know what I mean. There's a big difference between, with all due respect to Finlay Beelum, who's done brilliantly, and I think he's working his socks off and improved his game so much and been really consistent. But Tyke Furlong is world class. Robbie Henshaw is world class, and a consistent performer. Gibson Park has been so good. If the performance didn't go well tomorrow, and it's that's the reality of what we faced in Wales. That Warren Gatland rolled the dice going back with a lot of older players. Ireland were very, very good, and how good were Wales? That's if you were kind of picking through it. I think Ireland would be very mindful of that themselves. But as regards getting impact off the bench, I think there's a lot of impact off that Ireland bench tomorrow. Having Ian Henderson back really kind of helps that situation. Jack Conan off the bench, a lot of experience. Having Kilcoyne come in there for Cian Healy as well. So we don't know, but I think there's a lot of players, and the look of the bench is one of experience and guys who won't panic when they come into a big international test match. And that's your fear sometimes, that you end up with players that can't make a difference or change the game when they come in. And Ireland's depth chart, even though there's certain positions you'd love to be deeper in and have guys outside the 23 who were very unfortunate. There's lots of loose forwards, as there always is, but front row, as regards the prop situation, regular starters for the provinces, guys really, if they were in any other team, they get picked. So you'd love to have that situation. France have a depth chart that's people would be very envious of, but I think it's improved a lot. Yes, for sure.
Couldn't help but notice what you might call the rugby league influence on a couple of the games last weekend, Quinny. Especially Wigan Warriors this weekend. You have Andy Farrell up against Sean Edwards in many respects. There seemed to be a lot more offloading from the Irish team. It seems like a more entertaining product watching Ireland now, and even watching France as well, than say games 10, 12 years ago. Is that why we're also excited about this match tomorrow? Because it's two teams with quite exciting styles.
I wouldn't say to be careful where I say this. Sean Edwards could be watching this morning. I think Wales are pragmatic in their approach, where they obviously realise that they have incredible power and physicality. They're a very big side. Dupont is the best rugby player in the world. He's just outstanding. His attack, defensively, he breaks up the opposition's attack a lot of the times. But France kick a lot. They kick out of defence and they put the ball straight up the middle of the field. They don't necessarily kick for touch. They are very, very talented and can move the ball when they have to. But their style is to try and get in the opposition 22 and really that's when they come alive, and they look for little bits of magic, and they have a lot of X factor players. Mofana at 12 is a superb player as well. There's no Jonathan Dante there who plays for La Rochelle, and he's been very effective for this French team as well. Gail Ficou, very experienced. So they've lots of big ball carriers, and they can run out over people. But for Ireland, their game. You talk about the excitement of the offloading and stuff like that. I think it's just a confidence in attack, and lines are running and all that stuff. If there was anywhere that would concern me is Ireland just being a bit more pragmatic at times, and we saw it 20 minutes after half time last week. It's just maybe getting hold of the ball, kicking long, getting good line speed, putting pressure on the opposition and trying to play for territory. But you don't want to change or stifle their mentality, because they were under incredible pressure in New Zealand, the second and third test, and the confidence they showed to just keep the ball alive, and their accuracy is very impressive. But tomorrow is a real test as regards that physicality, because they struggled last year in Paris. Even though they clawed their way back into the game, they struggled with physicality, and Sean Edwards. A lot of it is down to Sean Edwards and his plan, closing the gap in the line out, big pressure at the scrum, pressure at breakdown, line speed, all that kind of stuff. And Ireland looked disjointed and looked a little bit out of sorts in that first half last year in Paris. They got the confidence then in the second half they had no other choice but to go and attack, and they were brilliant in that second half, the way they played, and clawed their way right back into the game. So it is going to be down to how they manage the game as well. But I suppose, Shane, me saying that France are pragmatic, France can be incredibly dangerous as well if something is on. Intimac will go for it, or Dupont, and then the reaction is pretty good. The big improvement with this French side, and we've said it many times, is their work rate, fitness, and their attitude around staying alive all the time and trying to be really intense in what they do. You're always going to play against a big French side, but you back yourself, and anyone who's ever beaten them in the last 10 years, it's down to keeping the ball for long periods of time and hoping they switch off and get a little bit lazy. But the mentality of this French team is different, and I think we'll see a different French team than we saw in Rome last week. They know that themselves.
I want to be careful how I phrase this, but there was the comment years ago in hurling. Donald Cusack accused the Kilkenny players of being like Stepford wives, like the robotic kind of way they went about things. It was very under Cody regimented. There was comments from Johnny Sexton during the week when I was watching the press conference where he was like, we now embrace the favourites tag, we embrace being world number one in the nicest possible way. Is it quite a positive thing for an Irish fan to hear? Because years ago that number one or the favourites tag mightn't have been worn too lightly, but this team seem more robotic and more well able to wear it.
Yeah, I think yes, for sure, and it's a stronger mentality. I think they're under no illusions that, and most sports people are. If you don't turn up with the right attitude and you use that confidence in the wrong way, you can get found out and you can get cut out. I think it's really good thing to generate, and I've been in dressing rooms before where you're under pressure before the game or at half time and someone speaks up and you actually believe what they say. That, in other words, in simple terms, if somebody says, well, we've not performed in the first half, and if we do X, Y, and Z, and we're fitter and we have this fitness and we can score tries if we hold on to the ball, and you start to believe it and generate it, I think it's kind of like having that before the game, but also being aware if you don't do your basics well, if you're sloppy in your scrums and lineouts and you're a little bit slow into the breakdown, things start to unravel a little bit. And so I think there is a confidence there, but I think they're humble around that confidence, if you know what I mean. I think none of us, well, I certainly don't think that in any way they will get cocky about French side coming to Dublin, who on their day they are favourites for the World Cup, and they're real potential winners at the World Cup. They're going to be incredibly hard to stop.
On that, Quinny, just to pick that up, because if Italy do as they should have done with the last play of the game, if they had like an out half who could have squeezed them into the corner, if they had a little bit more composure, we'd have a totally different conversation about France today, right? We've been saying, oh geez, they were caught by Italy in the opening round. How do we fully reflect on them? What's your thoughts of like the tightness of that game? Should we be encouraged by their fallibility or impressed by the fact that they could actually grind it out in the end?
I think a mixture of both. I think France are kind of on a bit of a journey as well of developing a mentality, and Sean Edwards-Galtier and Rafael Ibanez have done a brilliant job there. I think there's a different body language about this French side. So we should be impressed that they had enough to get the job done, in a sense that they won playing poorly with a lot of bad discipline, but they didn't enjoy it. They wouldn't have enjoyed it. The bad news for Ireland is, they're going to get a rocket up their backsides all week. It's a 6-day turnaround for them. I think they were rusty and probably really disappointed with the way they played at times, and they should have kicked on and won by more. But credit to Italy, and I think everybody is delighted with the way Italy played, and hopefully they can continue that through the championship. But they're a very, very powerful side, and this is a real challenge for them, you think, coming to Dublin. They were here 2 years ago, and I think Ireland were kind of struggling a little bit. They lost to Wales in the first round of the championship, 15-13 to that game in France. I think if you remember, James Lowe nearly scored in the corner. One or two little defensive errors, and France had 2 tries, won the game, and they were able to see it out. So there's a lot of steel and resilience in these French players, and they'll know the vast majority of the Irish team are Leinster players. Toulouse have played them a number of times. They were in Dublin here last year. So they know that Ireland are going to try and play with this pace and tempo, and they'll try and stop them. But it'll be interesting, maybe we've hyped France up too much, but I think, look, that's probably taking it too far. I think when you look at the players individually, there's a lot of brilliant players in there who probably just need to change gears a little bit, and it's a little bit of a mental wake-up call for them.
And some of them, like you point out, know how to beat Leinster, the Leinster players in that, including some of the La Rochelle lads, including Gregory Alldritt. And the back row, Quinny, your area of speciality, it looks like it's such an intriguing battle. He's Irish qualified through, I think, a grandparent, Gregory Alldritt. Obviously, that ship has sailed now. If he'd have turned green, obviously one of the most fascinating battles is himself against Doris tomorrow. If he'd turned green, which one of them are you putting in your team?
They're 2 world-class players, aren't they? They just have so many moments in the game, turnovers, carries. Alldritt is so kind of robust, and he's just non-stop, works incredibly hard, and I'm a big fan of his for a number of years, and he's always highly involved in what France are doing, with the ball, without the ball. Doris, on the other hand, I think his game has gone from strength to strength. His footwork, he's carrying. I think I'd try and play the 2 of them, but Doris is certainly the one for me that's just really grown as a player. I think he's incredibly mature now. His reading of the game is superb, I think, and that's one of the biggest strengths for both of them, actually, the way they read the game. And any great number 8s I would have played with in my own career, the best of those were ones who can read the game, because you have to be a good footballer, obviously, but it's being able to see things in front of you, whether it be when you're defending or whether you're carrying the ball or going forward. But 2 wonderful players, and that's a real battle. And you can be a brilliant player, but on either of these teams, Alldritt or Doris, but it's up to the players around them as well. And I think it's a really intriguing battle, that whole front row. For them to have Charles Olivan back as well is a big boost, because he's a big leader for them. He's their captain. He was out for most of last year with a cruciate ligament injury. He's a great player as well, and Jalanche is abrasive. He's aggressive. So it's a real battle, and it's a real area of France's strength. They brought back Francois Cross on the bench as well, and they've Malakou, who's another outstanding athlete as well. They've gone for that 6-2 split, so they're relying on that energy and power off the bench, Galtier is.
if you're Andy Farrell in the dressing room, Quinny, what areas of the French game are you focusing on to target? Like the maul was one in which I know Italy got one try, certainly from the French maul mistake, and a penalty as well at one stage. And then the indiscipline as well. 18, I don't think they had conceded. I read somewhere that the last time they conceded more penalties was in 2003 in a Six Nations match against Italy. 18, Ireland conceded 13 of their own against Wales. But if they can pinpoint that French indiscipline and force mistakes, surely that's a route to a victory.
Well, against anyone, Shane, if you can build multiple phases, teams, no matter how disciplined you are, you're going to get pinged here and there for offside or indiscretion. So I think if Ireland were looking to, and it's about their attack as well and how you beat France, it's about keeping the ball for long periods of time. I think you'd be more concerned about their strengths if I was being honest, which is the scrum, their power around the breakdown, their physicality. How do you combat that? That first half in Paris last year was a little bit scary, to be honest, with the way they just physically outmuscled Ireland on a few occasions. It wasn't down to sheer size or anything like that. It was just their very physical side and their abrasive players. So for Ireland, getting the scrum right is number one priority, I think. Winning their own line-out ball. And we saw last week that some great attacks off their line-out when they won clean possession. I think if you're trying to expose France in any way, I think it's just playing with that pace and tempo and being really accurate in attack, and hope that you get into high phases and that you can get mismatches. But Ireland's maul has been really good defensively and from an attacking point of view. So you can't drift away from what you want to do in a game as well. But I think Ireland, and they did it last week a lot. They win lineouts out the field. Someone secures the ball, and then you have Sheehan or Van der Fleer coming off the back of the lineout, or Doris. So it just gives you a little bit of space throughout the field and allows you to pick places to attack.
I'm going to need one-word answers from you here, because you're another media outlet coming, one of your many portfolio of media outlets, Quinny, looking to come and get you. So give me one-word answers here then. Ireland, France?
I think Ireland will win.
Scotland, Wales? Come on, Wales.
I think Scotland will win. They slipped up 2 years ago in the same fixture, so same kind of results. But I think this time, I think Scotland will win this time. And it's England? A good Welsh side, though. It's exciting that Warren Gatland has made 6 changes. He's gone for youth. He rolled the dice last week. England, Italy.
On Sunday.
You'd have to think that England will probably bounce back. Their attack was very blunt last week, but hopefully, I think everyone would love to see Italy make a game of that and continue in the championship and be really, really challenging the other teams.
Yep, they may well do. Quinny, thanks a million. Good man.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the games. Alan Quinlan, as informative and interesting as always.